They say a mother's love is unconditional. I used to believe that until my own daughter looked me dead in the eye and called me a burden. It was on a rainy Tuesday morning, the kind of day when the clouds hang low and every drop against the window sounds like judgment. I was standing by the kitchen counter, pouring coffee, when Lisa stormed in hair still wet, perfume too sharp, and eyes full of the kind of pity that cuts deeper than anger. "Mom," she sighed, tossing her purse onto the table. "We need to talk. You can't keep living here like this." Like this. As if this meant being 70, moving slower than I used to, or taking up too much space in the home I had paid off decades ago. I smiled gently, the way mothers do when they're trying not to cry. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Lisa didn't sit down. She just folded her arms, that same defensive stance she used to use as a teenager whenever I told her no. You're not the same anymore, Mom. You forget things. You leave the stove on. It's like taking care of a child." I felt my heart drop, the warmth of the coffee fatting from my hands. "Lisa, She cut me off. "I have a career, Mom, a husband, a life. I can't keep worrying about you all the time. It's too much. You're just a burden." The word hung there like smoke in the air, thick, choking, impossible to clear. A burden. For years, I'd sacrificed everything for her, worked double shifts at the diner, mended her dresses, stayed up late to help with college applications. I'd gone without new clothes, vacations, even proper meals sometimes, just so she could have everything she ever wanted. And now I was too much. I nodded slowly, pretending her words didn't slice through me. "I understand, Lisa. You have your life. You don't need to explain." She looked relieved, maybe even proud of herself, and kissed my cheek before heading out to work. I stood there long after she left, the coffee in my cup gone cold, my heart heavier than ever. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house in silence, my house. Every picture frame, every creaky floorboard, every dent in the old furniture carried pieces of my life. Thomas and I had built this home together brick by brick when we first moved to Charleston. It was where Lisa took her first steps, where we hosted Christmas dinners, where Thomas had taken his last breath. And now, it was just a place where I wasn't wanted anymore. But I wasn't helpless. I wasn't finished. The next morning, I called Mr. Ellis, our family lawyer. He'd been with us for decades and still sent me a Christmas card every year. "Evelyn," he said in his warm, steady voice, "what can I do for you?" "I want to sell the house," I said. There was silence. "Are you sure about that? It's been yours for over 40 years. "Yes," I said firmly. "I want it done quietly, no word to Lisa." He hesitated, then finally agreed. "All right, Evelyn, I'll handle it." The process took about 3 weeks. I kept my routines the same so Lisa wouldn't suspect anything: morning walks, crossword puzzles, even baking her favorite peach cobbler when she came by. She'd smile, eat a piece, and talk about her upcoming trip to Miami. I just listened, memorizing every sound, every gesture, because I knew soon I'd be gone. But before I left, I wanted to leave something behind, something that would make her feel what I had felt that morning in the kitchen. Not out of spite, but out of love, the kind that teaches lessons too late. In the attic, a place Lisa never bothered to visit, I began to prepare. Dust floated in the sunlight as I opened old boxes filled with memories. Baby clothes, photo albums, Thomas's Army medals. And in one small wooden chest, tucked beneath yellowed letters, I found what I was looking for, an envelope Thomas had given me years ago with the words for Lisa, "when she's ready." I had never opened it. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor and finally did. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small key. Thomas's handwriting was neat but faint. "If you're reading this, sweetheart, it means our girl has grown. Inside the safety deposit box this key belongs to, she'll find what we built for her, but only if she's learned the value of love and humility." I smiled through tears. My husband always believed in second chances. That night, I added my own note beside his, simple, honest, final. "Lisa, I loved you enough to let you make your mistakes, but I also loved myself enough to stop being one. I sealed the letter, placed it back in the chest, and locked it with the key. Then I called Mr. Ellis again. "The papers are ready," he said. "Once you sign, the house is officially sold. I'll be there tomorrow morning." Before bed, I walked through every room one last time. The kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon. The living room lamp Thomas fixed years ago flickered softly in the corner. And in the hallway, the old family photo hung crooked on the wall, the one Lisa used to hate because she said her smile looked weird. I straightened the frame and whispered, "You'll see it someday, sweetheart, and maybe then you'll remember who really held this family together." The next day, I signed the papers and packed 2 suitcases. I left the keys with Mr. Ellis and took the train to Savannah, a quiet coastal town where no one knew me, where the sea breeze carried more kindness than any words Lisa had said in years. By the time she came home that evening, the house would be empty. But the attic would still be waiting. When Lisa pulled into the driveway that Friday evening, she was still on the phone with her husband, Greg. "Yeah, I'll handle it," she said, her tone sharp and distracted. "Mom probably left another mess in the kitchen again. She's been getting worse lately." She didn't notice at first that the house looked different. The curtains were drawn. The porch light was off. Even the old flower pots that usually lined the steps were gone. She hung up the phone, balancing her purse on one arm as she unlocked the front door, or at least tried to. The key didn't fit. "What the?" she muttered, jiggling it again. Then she spotted the note taped to the door in her mother's familiar cursive handwriting. "Lisa, please see Mr. Ellis when you have a moment." Her stomach tightened. Inside, through the window, she could see empty walls. No furniture, no family photos, just bare, echoing space. Lisa's hands began to shake as she called her mother's phone, straight to voicemail. Then she tried Mr. Ellis. He answered on the first ring. "Lisa," he said quietly, "I was expecting your call." "What's going on?" she demanded. "Where's my mother? Why can't I get into the house?" There was a pause, the kind that comes when someone's trying to decide how honest they should be. "Your mother sold the house," he finally said. "It was finalized this morning." "What?" Her voice rose. "That's impossible. She can't just—" "She could," he interrupted softly. "It was entirely her right. The deed was in her name." Lisa felt dizzy. "But where is she?" "I can't disclose her location," Mr. Ellis said carefully. "She asked for privacy, however," he hesitated. "She did leave something for you. She said you'd find it in the attic." Lisa's mouth went dry. "The attic?" "Yes. She wanted you to find it when you realized she was gone." Lisa didn't even wait to argue. She called a locksmith and had the door opened within an hour. The moment she stepped inside, she was hit by the emptiness. No smell of cinnamon, no ticking of the old wall clock, no sign of life at all. Every room felt hollow, stripped bare of warmth. Her heels echoed against the hardwood floor as she walked through the house. Kitchen, living room, her old bedroom, all empty. Until she reached the hallway. There, hanging slightly crooked, was the same family photo her mother always kept, the one she'd hated as a teenager. The one where her mom's arm was around her, both smiling too wide for the camera. Someone had straightened the frame recently. Lisa stared at it for a long time before finally whispering, "What are you doing, Mom?" Then she climbed the attic stairs. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of cedar. She pulled the cord on the hanging light, and the bulb flickered to life. In the center of the attic sat a small wooden chest. On top of it, a sealed envelope with her name in her mother's handwriting. Lisa hesitated before sitting cross-legged on the floor, just as her mother once had. She opened the envelope and began to read. "My dear Lisa, you once told me I was a burden. It broke my heart, but it also opened my eyes. I realized I had spent so long giving that I forgot how to live for myself. This house was once full of laughter, love, and second chances. But lately, it's been full of resentment, And I don't blame you entirely for that. Grief makes us cruel sometimes. I know you loved your father deeply. So did I. Maybe we both lost ourselves trying to keep life moving after he passed. Inside this chest, you'll find something your father left for you long ago. He wanted you to have it when you learned the value of love and humility. Maybe this is that moment. Mom. Tears blurred her vision as she unfolded the second letter, one written in her father's neat, faded handwriting. Lisa, if you're reading this, it means your mother trusted you enough to find it. You've always been strong, sometimes too strong for your own good. Strength isn't about control, it's about compassion. When I was gone, your mother held this family together. She gave up her peace so you could have yours. Never forget that love isn't measured by what it gives you, it's measured by what it costs. In the safety deposit box tied to this key, you'll find your future. Use it wisely. Love. Dad. A small key fell into her lap. Lisa sat there in silence, the attic creaking softly around her. For the first time in years, she felt small, like that little girl again who used to run to her mother's arms after a nightmare. Her phone buzzed. Greg again. She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered into the empty air, "I'm sorry, Mom." The words cracked in her throat. She said them again, louder this time. "I'm sorry." But the house stayed silent. Over the next few days, Lisa couldn't think about anything else. She drove to Mr. Ellis's office, clutching the letter and the key. He greeted her kindly, as if he'd been expecting her. "I take it you found the chest." Lisa nodded, her eyes red. "What's in the deposit box?" He smiled faintly. "Let's find out." They drove to the local bank, where the manager led them to a small, private room. Mr. Ellis turned the key and opened the box. Inside was a stack of papers, a few old photos, and another envelope labeled for Lisa's new beginning. Lisa opened it carefully. Inside was a check, not for millions, but enough to buy a modest home, enough to start over. Alongside it was one last note in her mother's handwriting. "You once told me you felt trapped, Lisa, like you were carrying too much. I sold the house so neither of us had to feel trapped anymore. This money is what's left after the sale. It's yours. Use it to build something beautiful, something kind. But before you spend a single dollar, go back to the house and listen. Sometimes the walls remember what we forget." That evening, Lisa returned to the empty home one last time. The sun was setting, painting the walls gold. She stood in the living room, surrounded by echoes, laughter from old birthdays, her father's voice telling stories, her mother humming in the kitchen. It was all still here. And for the first time, Lisa understood. She sank to the floor, clutching the letter to her chest. "You weren't a burden," she whispered through tears. "You were home." Outside, the sky darkened. The world kept turning. Somewhere in Savannah, Evelyn Reed sat by the ocean, a cup of tea in her hand and peace in her heart for the first time in years. She didn't know whether Lisa had found the attic yet, but she hoped, when she did, that she'd finally remember that love isn't something you measure in convenience. It's something you fight for. And sometimes, the most powerful act of love is simply walking away. The day Lisa found the letter and the key, something in her cracked open. She tried going back to her regular life, to Greg, to her job, to the sound of the dishwasher and the constant rush of people who only cared about deadlines and meetings. But every night when she lay down to sleep, she kept seeing her mother's handwriting. Sometimes, the walls remember what we forget. Those words followed her like a ghost. A week later, she couldn't take it anymore. She booked a flight to Savannah, Georgia, the return address on one of the envelopes her mother had sent to Mr. Ellis during the sale. She didn't tell Greg. She just packed a bag, drove to the airport, and boarded the plane with trembling hands. Savannah smelled like salt and magnolias. The streets were slow, peaceful, nothing like the noise she was used to. She rented a car and drove toward the coast, where the houses grew smaller and quieter, framed by trees that bent toward the sea like they were listening to secrets. The address led her to a pale yellow cottage with blue shutters and a small garden out front. There was an old rocking chair on the porch, and sitting in it, sipping tea from a floral mug, was her mother, Evelyn Raid. Her gray hair was tied back neatly, her face calm, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Lisa stopped at the gate, unsure whether to call out or run. Her mother turned her head slightly, as if she already knew. "Well," she said softly, "you took longer than I thought." Lisa froze. Evelyn stood up slowly, her smile gentle but guarded. "I thought you might find me. You were always a determined girl." Lisa's throat burned. You left without saying goodbye." "I did," Evelyn said. "Sometimes goodbyes make people say things they do mean." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes. "Like calling you a burden." Evelyn's face softened. "Yes, like that." They stood in silence for a long moment. The sound of waves filled the space between them. "Can I come in?" Lisa asked finally. Evelyn nodded and opened the door. Inside, the cottage smelled like lavender and lemon. The shelves were lined with books, small seashells, and framed photographs, none newer than 10 years old. There was peace here, the kind Evelyn had never found back in that big house full of echoes. Lisa sat at the little wooden table, while Evelyn poured tea. "I didn't sell the house to punish you," Evelyn said, breaking the silence. "I sold it to free both of us. You were drowning in guilt, and I was drowning in memories. That home wasn't home anymore, it was a cage." Lisa looked down at her cup. "You should have told me. You should have let me fix it." Evelyn gave a sad smile. "I tried too, for years. You didn't want to listen. You wanted to control everything because you thought that's what love looked like." Lisa swallowed hard. "I was angry after Dad died. You moved on like nothing happened." "I didn't move on," Evelyn said quietly. "I survived, there's a difference." The words hit her like a wave. For the first time, Lisa saw her mother not as a fragile, aging woman, but as a person who had carried a lifetime of love, loss, and sacrifice. She took a shaky breath. "I found Dad's letter." Evelyn nodded. "He wrote it the week before he passed. He knew you'd need it someday." Lisa's voice cracked. "He said I'd learn compassion when it cost me something. I think I finally understand what he meant." Evelyn reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. Her touch was warm, steady. "Then maybe we're both free now." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, really talking, for the first time in years. Evelyn told her about the tiny book club she'd joined, the garden she was growing, and how peaceful the sea sounded at night. Lisa confessed how empty her life had felt despite all her success, how she'd been trying so hard to be perfect that she'd forgotten how to be kind. And when the sun began to set, painting the room in gold, Evelyn whispered, "You know, Lisa, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means remembering without hating yourself for it." Lisa felt tears roll down her cheeks. "Do you forgive me?" Evelyn smiled softly. "Of course, but more importantly, do you forgive yourself?" Lisa didn't answer. She just nodded slowly, her heart heavy and light all at once. Later that night, they walked along the beach together. The air was cool, the sky streaked with stars. Lisa listened as the ocean whispered against the sand. "Dad loved this sound," she said. "He did," Evelyn said. "He always said the ocean reminded him that nothing truly ends. It just changes form." They walked in silence again. Then Lisa said, "You know, I think I'd like to move here, not with you, just nearby. Maybe start over." Evelyn smiled. "That's what your father would have wanted." "I can sell the condo," Lisa continued. "Maybe open a small bakery or something. I don't know, something that makes people smile." Evelyn laughed softly. "You baking, I'd pay to see that." Lisa grinned through her tears. "Don't push your luck, Mom." Weeks passed, and for the first time in a long while, peace settled between them. Lisa found a little rental not far from the cottage. She started volunteering at a local community center, teaching cooking classes to kids. She wasn't sure why, but it made her feel closer to her father. Every evening, she'd visit Evelyn, bringing groceries or helping in the garden. And sometimes, they'd just sit quietly, listening to the waves. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Evelyn handed her a small, wrapped box. "What's this?" Lisa asked. Evelyn smiled. "Something I found in the attic before I left. I saved it for you." Lisa unwrapped it carefully. Inside was an old, faded photograph, her as a child, covered in flour, sitting on her father's lap, both laughing uncontrollably. On the back, written in her father's handwriting, were the words, "Our little mess maker, proof that joy doesn't need to be perfect." Lisa pressed the photo to her chest, her tears falling silently. Evelyn placed a hand over hers. "That's what life is, sweetheart, a beautiful, messy thing. We can't fix the past, but we can love what's left." Lisa smiled through her tears. "You were never a burden, Mom. You were my reason." Evelyn looked at her daughter with quiet pride. "Then I guess I did something right." Months later, Evelyn passed peacefully in her sleep, the ocean breeze drifting through the open window. Lisa found her mother's final note on the nightstand beside her. "Don't mourn me long, darling. I had the ending I wanted by the sea, with love in my heart and forgiveness in yours. Remember what your father said. Strength without compassion is just loneliness in disguise. Live gently, love loudly. Mom." Lisa folded the note and looked out toward the sunrise over the water. The world felt softer somehow, like her mother's love still lingered in the light. And for the first time, Lisa didn't feel burdened. She felt free. She whispered to the wind, "Thank you, Mom." And the waves answered back. Steady, endless, forgiving. It's strange how silence changes when you've made peace with it. After Lisa left that night, I sat on the porch, listening to the ocean breathe. The waves rolled in and out like old memories, soft, unhurried, certain. I used to think silence meant loneliness. Now it feels like forgiveness. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm of my new life settled in. I'd wake up early, brew my coffee, and walk along the beach with Bailey, the neighbor's golden retriever who'd somehow adopted me. He'd wait outside my gate every morning like clockwork, tail wagging, ready to lead me to the water. In those quiet hours, I often thought of my daughter, not with anger anymore, but with a slow, tender ache, the kind that reminds you that love, even broken, still exists somewhere. One afternoon, a knock came at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, there stood Lisa, holding a bouquet of daisies. She looked different, softer somehow. The tension in her face was gone, replaced by something calm, something humble. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice gentle. "Hi, sweetheart," I replied, unable to stop the smile spreading across my face. "You found the right house this time." She laughed, and it was the first time in years that sound didn't sting. "Can I come in?" she asked. "You never have to ask." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one she'd sat at months ago, sipping tea. "I've been volunteering," she began. "At a community kitchen. We cook for seniors who don't have anyone. I met this woman, she reminded me of you." "Oh," I raised a brow. "She kept saying she didn't want to be a burden," Lisa said. "And I realized that was me. I made you feel that way, for years." Her voice cracked on the last word. I reached over and touched her hand. "Lisa, I forgave you a long time ago." "I know," she said, tears brimming. "But I needed to forgive myself. I thought taking care of you meant controlling you, keeping you small so I could feel big. I was wrong." There it was, the honesty I'd been waiting to hear. Not for revenge, not for satisfaction, just truth. I smiled softly. "You know what your father used to say? We don't get to choose who we love. We only choose how we show it." Lisa nodded. He was right. I just wish I'd learned sooner. Over the next few weeks, Lisa visited often. Sometimes she'd bring groceries, other times just stories. She'd tell me about her work, her new friends, even her plans to open that bakery she'd always joked about. And every time she left, she'd hug me a little tighter. One evening, as she was leaving, she paused at the door. "Mom," she said, "I found something else in the attic." I chuckled. "You mean after I already left a whole treasure hunt for you?" She smiled faintly. "Yeah, this one was hidden behind the old mirror. It was a box of your letters, the ones you wrote to Dad after he passed." Ah, those letters. I'd forgotten I'd hidden them there. "They weren't meant to be found," I said quietly. "I know," she replied, "but I'm glad I did. They were beautiful, Mom. You talked about your pain, your loneliness, but you also talked about hope, about me." I blinked back tears. What did I say? "You said you hoped one day I'd understand that love isn't measured by how much you give, but how much you forgive." The room went still. Lisa took my hand again. "I understand now, Mom. I really do." Time moved differently after that. Lisa and I rebuilt our relationship, slowly, with care, like mending a torn quilt one stitch at a time. She started visiting every Sunday with fresh bread from her bakery. We'd sit by the window, slice it warm, and laugh about things that used to hurt. She even brought Greg once. He'd been hesitant, awkward at first, but eventually we found common ground, mostly in teasing Lisa about her terrible driving. Life had softened. It felt like a second chance I never thought I'd get. One evening, while Lisa was helping me organize old photo albums, she looked up and said, "You know, Mom, I told the kids at the center your story about how you left me that note and the key. They all said it sounded like something out of a movie." I laughed. "Maybe one day it will be." "Maybe," she said, smiling, "but you know what the best part is?" "What?" "They all wanted to know what I did with the money from the house. And I told them I used it to start the bakery. But I also started a little fund for elderly women who get kicked out of their homes. I called it the Attic Fund." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "You did that?" She nodded. "Because of you. Because you showed me that sometimes the biggest surprises aren't in what we inherit, but in what we learn." I smiled, tears streaming down my face. "Your father would be so proud." Years passed, and the cottage became more than a home. It became a legacy. Lisa took care of me as my health started to fade, but not out of guilt this time. Out of love, real love. And every now and then, she'd tell visitors the story of the Attic Fund. How it started with a forgotten letter and a mother's broken heart that refused to stay bitter. When my time finally came, I didn't fear it. I knew I'd done what I needed to do, not just for her, but for myself. The day of my funeral, Lisa stood by the sea, holding the same bouquet of daisies she'd brought to my doorstep that first day in Savannah. The breeze lifted her hair, and the sound of waves carried my favorite song from the church nearby. She opened the final letter I'd left for her. "My dearest Lisa, if you're reading this, it means my journey has ended, but yours still goes on. I don't want you to cry. I want you to live loudly, kindly, without apology. I sold a house, yes, but what I really sold was my pain, and in return I bought us freedom. Keep the attic key. Let it remind you that even in forgotten places, love waits to be found. With all my heart, Mom." Lisa closed the letter and pressed it against her chest. "I will, Mom," she whispered. Then she walked to the edge of the water and let the key fall into the waves. It sank beneath the surface, swallowed by light and salt and memory. As the tide rolled in, she smiled through her tears, because for the first time in her life she didn't feel guilty. She didn't feel burdened. She felt grateful. And somewhere in the rhythm of the sea, I like to think she heard my voice again, whispering with the waves. "I'm proud of you, Lisa. You finally found your way home.